Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky! Steez! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue think they slate, dropping unrealistic mad. 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, flip on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals to fill the day. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday afternoon. I hope you're having a great day. It's a little bit steamy down at the Jersey Shore on the outside, but it is bright and beautiful. And it is a beautiful day inside as we're going to talk a little bit about some Eagles news, and we're going to provide some hot takes about the 2024 NFL season, folks. So we're going to get right into it. Let's kick this thing off with a friendly reminder that this is going to stream will be both on my channel, the Nicky Steez channel, and the Hardcore Sports Network. You guys can, if you haven't checked out either channel, you can sub it up. So there's my channel right there. You guys can check me out, sub me up on my channel. So you can check out my streams, check out my YouTube shorts as I bring them in. And also, if you haven't done so already, which most of you I'm sure have, here's the link to the Hardcore Sports Network to subscribe if you have not done so yet. However, we're going to dive right into it. So, man, it's that time of day. By the end of today, August 27th, the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as the other 31 NFL teams, will have to have their rosters cut down to 53 men. So the news is flying left and right. We've got a few drop already. So last time I checked, we saw that the Eagles roster cuts. They earlier on released QB Will Grier, who was the fourth stringer. He had been a part of Kellen Moore's teams as a backup, so he was originally just brought in for familiarity. If he gets a spot, he gets a spot. Ultimately, he didn't. The defensive back, Parry Nickerson, offensive linebacker, Julian Ackerwan, and Max Sharping, the offensive lineman. All those guys so far were nothing significant yet. Obviously, we're just trimming down the fat metaphorically. And the NFL on their website has a live tracker of all the teams and the moves they're making, which I will be following throughout this stream. First, we're going to go a little bit about the Eagles. And on my channel, this stream exclusively on my channel, there is a poll asking who you guys think should be the backup quarterback. Whether it be the options being Kenny Pickett or Tanner McKee. And right now, so far, we're going to take a look at all the moves real quickly. So far, I'll share the screen with you guys. We got this from the NFL website. So for the Eagles, here we got QB Will Grier, EJ Jenkins, CJ Uzomah, Max Sharping, Julian Akara. Now we add defensive back Mike Gardner and Parry Nickerson. So far, the most surprising of them all is that CJ Uzomah didn't even make the roster. I would have thought with his pedigree, because he was a solid tight end, you thought he'd at least make a spot on the roster at least and get some playing time. Obviously, he wasn't going to be the starter over Dallas Goedert, but you thought CJ Uzomah would have at least made the roster spot, but he just didn't click with this Eagles team for whatever reason. And hey, but that sometimes happens in life. Sometimes guys who you think would be a safe bet to at least make the roster don't pan out at all. They bomb and they're not cut for the system. And that's what happened there with Uzomah. I didn't see anything from him that impressed me during his playing time in preseason, those games with the Ravens and the Patriots. And obviously, the Eagles coaching staff and front office felt the same way. And ultimately, he was cut. And that's the most notable cut so far. And I'm thinking there's a good, as far as other possible options, John Ross, even though he did end his preseason concussion protocol, it's kind of a shame to say that. But ultimately, considering John Ross was just coming in as a guy to fill a spot, I don't think that was going to happen. It was just, and now that he's injured, it's just like, well, yeah, I guess he wasn't really going to make the roster anyway, so they kind of felt. So it was just kind of like, well, I guess he's not going to make it. I mean, I hate to say that, but he really wasn't cut for this team. So don't be surprised if John Ross ends up getting cut. And speaking of wide receivers, we got another big story we got to talk about. Now, I dropped a short on my channel about Eagles trade for Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders. It happened on Thursday morning. We received Dotson and a 5th-round pick in exchange for them getting a 3rd and 2 7th-round picks, which I think that's which is a solid package right there to get a number 3 guy on this team. Especially now with Dotson being there. I don't think, going back to the previous subject I was talking about, I don't see John Ross having a spot on this Eagles team. He already came in as an NFL bust from his time with the Bengals. I definitely don't see him making it. But hey, that's a nice move right there with Jahan Dotson. He was a good receiver there for Washington. I can show his stats year by year. I'm going to show you how productive he was in that offense. And to show that, hey, he can be a valuable 3rd weapon for this team. It was funny, like, remember back when, in March, when Saquon joined, he made a tweet, a Madden joke, who put this mute together. But through his 2 seasons in Washington, we're going to take a look at his stats right in a moment. I'll show you his stats to show that, okay, Jahan Dotson, he's not going to be the number 1 guy. Now, he played 12 games his rookie season, 35 receptions on 61 targets, 523 yards and a touchdown. Then last year, 49 receptions, 4 touchdowns, 518 yards. So right there, those numbers show being a solid 3rd option on the roster, just to add some depth. Obviously, he's not going to be the number 1 guy. He's not going to get more targets than AJ and Devontae, but he's a guy that might still get you some targets. And you're probably going to see a statistical decline. People are going to be quick to point to, well, his stats aren't going to be the same as they were in Washington. Well, obviously they're not, because now you got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert at tight end. Obviously those guys are going to outshine Dotson in the offense. So most reasonable fans have absolutely no illusions of Jahan Dotson being a number 1 option. That's not what he was brought in for. He was brought in to add some depth, because it never hurts to have extra weapons on offense. We're in that era now, especially where the offense-friendly era, you need wide receivers on the team. You need at least a good 1 and 2. You need a solid 3rd option, maybe even a decent 4th option if you can find them. And Dotson fits that role of being the good 3rd option for them to go to. They can get you some receptions if needed to. He can be your go-to guy in emergency situations. Like, he can be your second look option if your first option isn't there. Look, if Jahan Dotson gets open while Hurts is on the run, he's past the 1st down marker. Hey, Hurts can throw to him and he can get us a 1st down or 2. So Dotson can still be productive in this offense as a number 3 guy. So that's why it's a nice trade. And what did we give up for him? A couple 7th-round picks and a 3rd-round pick? Let's face it, 7th-round picks rarely make the final roster. So what are we really giving up in the grand scheme of things? It's not giving up much for this guy. I feel this is a nice trade option. And I feel like Dotson, man, he can he can at least help us out in that role. So I think this is a good move. It's obviously not the biggest move in the world. It's not going to light the world on fire. It's not a, oh my God, Jahan Dotson, this is going to put us over the top and get us to win the Super Bowl. No. That's not what's going on here. We're just picking up a nice depth piece to add to this offense. And that's what we need. Because we saw the rest of the wide receiver room. We didn't have a solid number 3 guy. And God forbid, worst case scenario, you need someone to fill in for Devontae or AJ for a game or two. Jahan Dotson can be that guy. Well, I feel so. This is a good move right here. I think. You guys comment, let me know what you think in the chats. I like this trade so far. We didn't have to give up much to get him. I think it's a good move. And speaking of Eagles, another good piece of news is if you read, you can see the banner. It says LaShawn McCoy to be inducted into the Eagles Hall of Fame on November 6th during the home game versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was confirmed officially that from the Eagles website that LaShawn McCoy will in fact be a member of the Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Fame, and rightfully so. Yeah, he is the all-time single season rusher in the 2013 season for the Eagles, and also the single game rushing for that 2013 season. LaShawn McCoy was the rushing champion in the NFL regular season period. You had that, he had 1,607 total regular season rushing yards, and 217, which is a franchise record for a single game in that Snow Bowl against the Lions. Yes, sir, edition. LaShawn McCoy, 2013 was his year. He was lighting up the league. And he still had 2 other Pro Bowl nods outside of that. And a 2010s All-Decade Team guy. LaShawn McCoy was easily, I think, a better all-purpose. He was a better pure running back than Brian Westbrook. No offense to Westbrook, but LaShawn McCoy, for the time he was here, was a better all-purpose back. And he was healthy more frequently during his time on the Eagles roster than was Westbrook during his time. Well, definitely a well-deserved honor to be a member of the Philadelphia Eagles Ring of Honor. Now, as far as the Pro Football Hall of Fame, obviously there are Eagles fans that are going to have their biases and lean toward him being a Pro Football Hall of Famer. But no offense, guys, but I don't quite think LaShawn McCoy made the cut for Canton. I want to say that he would. I would like to say that, yeah, we got an Eagles player in Canton. But realistically, I don't think he quite makes the cut for Canton. I think for like 2010s, late 2000s, into the first half of the 2010s, running backs that'll make the cut for the Hall of Fame are guys like Adrian Peterson, Marshawn Lynch. I don't think LaShawn McCoy quite cuts that, but Eagles Hall Ring of Honor, hell yeah, son. So it'll be a nice ceremony right there on that November 6th home game versus the Jaguars. The all-time single-season Eagles rusher and single-game rusher to date will be inducted in the Eagles Ring of Honor. But it would be ironic if Saquon ended up, I don't mean to sound like it has her to be smart-ass, but it would be funny if, say, Saquon got 218 in that game. I mean, who knows? I'm not saying it will happen, but I don't know. I just thought of a random thought out there just to throw a little ironic humor into the mix. But that's only a what if. But back to LaShawn McCoy, definitely a well-deserved honor. It's a shame the way he left the Eagles with Chip Kelly trading him away to Buffalo, which made absolutely no sense. It's a shame. LaShawn McCoy in Buffalo, he just wasn't the same running back behind that Bills offensive line, because Buffalo during the LaShawn McCoy years, they're not the Buffalo Bills we've seen in recent years with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, who's now with the Houston Texans, and Sean McDermott as the coach. They weren't that team. So it was kind of a shame that LaShawn McCoy had to ride out his final years of being a relevant player with the Bills. Because I feel like if they would have just kept him LaShawn McCoy was eventually going to go anyway. He wasn't going to be an Eagle forever, but he should have been there at least 2 or 3 more years at least. 2015, 16, 17 maybe. That was kind of a shame. I think we did kind of do him dirty on his way out, but it's good to see he's at least going to be honored for his contributions during his time with the Eagles. So I'm happy about that right there. Because LaShawn McCoy, though, like I said, a well-deserved honor to be inducted in the Eagles Hall of Fame. 1 second, I have a quick sip of water before we switch gears. And now you guys see the banner. You know what we're going to talk about. We're going to go drop a few hot takes for the 2024 NFL season. This is going to be the fun part of the stream. And if you guys want to comment, feel free to comment. Let me know what your hot takes are. It could be anything about any team, what their record might be, about a player, about a coach, etc. It can be pretty much anything. Who you think might be the first coach canned, who you think might be the surprise team that ends up making a run to the playoffs, who do you think, what favorite team do you think is not going to live up to expectations, and pretty much anything to this upcoming season related classifies as a hot take. So if you guys want to comment, let me know your hot takes. Shine away. Feel free to shine and say what you want. But let's get into it. For the 2024 NFL season, I'm going to start with this. Cleveland Browns are not going to be the same team they were last year. They're not. I think they're going to regress because you got to remember, they got hot late in the season last year behind Joe Flacco, who they acquired from free agency waivers as a backup. They kind of got lucky. Flacco came in, was able to learn the offense quickly, and come into a system where a lot of teams took him for granted. Because that whole run where Flacco was hot with the Browns to help lead him to the playoffs, a lot of teams slept on him figuratively. They came in thinking, oh, he's late 30s, Joe Flacco. Come on, he hasn't done anything significant since he won that Super Bowl MVP. What makes you think he's going to do anything special with the Browns? So he took advantage of that right there and helped lead the Browns to the playoffs. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson was out. Now you come back to this season. Mr. Deshaun Watson is back in the lineup. You got to wonder how Ben Watson, Deshaun Roethlisberger, Deshaun Watson's going to do this year. Is he going to last the whole season? What's his play going to be? Because remember last year when he played before he was out for the season, he was kind of shit. Didn't see anything spectacular from him. They won a few games early in the season with him, but that was mostly at the backs of their defense. You would see Watson occasionally flash his stardom, he splashed his talent from his days in Houston, but he clearly wasn't the same quarterback. But that's what you get when you had a quarterback who was practically out of the NFL for 2 seasons. He wasn't allowed to play in the 2021 season. He was out for most of the 22 season. So clearly you were bringing a guy who was pretty much out of the league for 2 seasons. And then he missed most of last season. So I'm not exactly fully trusting Watson. And if you're the Browns, you don't have Joe Flacco to come in and save you if it don't work out with Watson. And you got a healthy Joe Burrow. Yeah, Pittsburgh is between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, who Russell Wilson, even at this point in his career, is still better than Kenny Pickett, which means Pittsburgh's offense will at least be a little bit better under Russ. And remember, right, they still won 2. Remember, Pittsburgh still won 9 games without a good quarterback, with Kenny Pickett, and then backups like Mitchell Trubisky. So the point I'm getting at is I don't see. With that being said, the Steelers were still a 9-win team. You got an upgrade at quarterback, at least with Russell Wilson, even if it is past his prime Russ. That's going to be a tough right there. The Ravens, if they stay healthy, they're going to be tough. I just don't see the Browns being able to have a similar run. And they have one of the harder schedules in the NFL this season. So that's one hot take right there. I don't see the Cleveland Browns being being in contention this year. Another hot take. I think by the end of the season, the Antonio Pierce metaphoric love affair with Raiders fans will wear off. I'm not saying it was necessarily that Antonio Pierce is going to suck. Here's why. Having Gardner Minshew, and if he doesn't last the full season, Aiden O'Connell as your 2 QBs is not going to help them out in the long run. When you got to go against teams like Kansas City twice a year, and when you're trying to make a push for the playoffs later in the season, you could possibly have, if Bo Nix pans out for the Broncos, maybe the Broncos could be in contention. The Bengals possibly in contention as long as Burrow is healthy. Steelers will probably likely be in the mix because they always are. The Bills, maybe the Jets if Rodgers stays healthy. They did win 7 games without him last year. So Jets could potentially be in the mix. Dolphins, I mean, you're talking about a loaded AFC. And then you're asking the Raiders, who don't really have a true quarterback. Their top QB is Gardner Minshew, a streaky quarterback who has some low-key Fitzpatrick comparisons. Is that the guy you really think is going to help you out late in the season for a playoff push? So I think that lack of a QB situation will hurt the Raiders late in the season. You'll start to see some fans feel like Antonio Pierce's welcome grew tired. Now, don't get me wrong. I still feel Pierce is a much better coach than Josh McSnake Oil. That's for sure. So I do feel Antonio Pierce is definitely better for the Raiders than Jet McDaniels. But it's not going to lead them to the promised land, at least not with this QB situation the way it is. Unless they find that QB, I don't know, maybe next year or something, then maybe they could have a shot at a turnaround. But I think the Raiders will be kind of average to below average at best. And then another one. And also, I'm thinking out in the end, I think Caleb Williams will help the Bears improve this year. I think that the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love getting that deal, it's a kind of hit or miss with him. You might see now that he's got that contract, he might not be playing as hard because he feels he's got guaranteed money. He doesn't have to play for it as hard. That might play a factor there. The Vikings are without a real quarterback for the season. I mean, you got the Cowboys. Who knows? They might not be in the mix. They might be on the cusp. But Caleb Williams, I've seen his highlights. He's certainly a better thrower than Justin Fields. I'm thinking there's a chance the Bears are a dark horse wild card contender if Caleb Williams stays healthy his rookie year. So I'm thinking they're at least I don't see them necessarily as a division winner or a top seed. I still think that's going to the Lions, but I do see the Bears as a potential dark horse wild card contender, maybe to get that 7th seed, maybe the 6th seed, depending on how seeding pans out. Maybe with the Bears' schedule, it might work in their favor. So I do think there's a shot there, at least a dark horse, to make the playoffs. I think the Jets, if Rodgers stays healthy, they have a shot at 8 or 9 wins, but they're not going to be Super Bowl contenders. Because here's why. The Jets won 7 games last year without Aaron Rodgers. They were stuck in a horrible quarterback situation, and they still found ways to at least be competitive. Aaron Rodgers is at least, even at this stage of his career in his early 40s, coming off in major injury, he's at least got the credentials and the credibility to at least be a better QB than Zach Wilson was. He'll at least, as long as he stays healthy, get him to at least possibly 8 or 9 wins. Maybe a playoff berth, but that's going to be tough in that AFC because it is a tougher conference. Like I said, it's going to be loaded with teams trying to push for the playoffs, like I said, with the Raiders take. You're going to have teams in the AFC, most of the teams in the AFC North all at least have a shot at a wild card. Then you could have maybe the Broncos, who were in the mix going into December if their QB plays better. You have the Dolphins, the Bills in that same conference with the division with the Jets. You also have the Texans and Colts possibly. I mean, it's going to be a loaded AFC, though. So there's no guarantee, even if they do win 8 or 9 games, that they're going to make the playoffs. Which, if that ends up being the case, don't be surprised if Saleh is shown the door at the end of the season. That'll tie me to another hot take. I think Robert Saleh, he is on his last legs as the Jets coach this season. I'm sorry. I mean, he did his best he could, but I don't see him panning out for this entire season. I think this will be his last season as the head coach of the New York Jets. They'll move on with a new head coach going forward. Give me 1 second. I'll have a sip of water real quick. Anthony Richards' health is going to be the lifeline for the Colts season this year. Last year, they were still in the mix going late in the season, even with backup Gardner Minshew. But this time around, I think Anthony Richardson doesn't stay healthy, their season's over. If he stays healthy, they at least have a shot. I believe right there. This year, it's all going to depend on Anthony Richardson if he stays healthy. He does, they have a shot. If not, forget about it. Because you saw he did play solid until the injury. And you think about how the Colts did last year, going 9-8, and still been having a shot going into the final week, which means to me, I'm thinking, hey, if Anthony Richardson would have stayed healthy, that team could have made the playoffs potentially or won the AFC South. So I think that's it. His health is going to decide the Colts season. And that's it for my hot takes right now. Oh, wait, and one more hot take. Baker Mayfield will not have as good a statistical season as last season. I don't see it happening. He's kind of a streaky quarterback. I know he's still got some decent weapons around him, but I just don't see it happening with Baker. Now that there's actually some pressure on him to succeed, I think he's going to fall off. I mean, last season, remember, Baker Mayfield went into that season, no pressure. There was no pressure for Baker to succeed. And he was ultimately able to get the Bucs to win that division by a 9-8 margin. And yes, you can say, well, they played solid in the wild card round against your team, the Eagles. Yes, but that game was more about the Eagles collapse than it was the Bucs. The very next day, all over everywhere. First Take, Pardon the Interruption, all over ESPN, all over NBC Sports Philadelphia. The topic wasn't about the Bucs being the Eagles, the defending conference champs going into that game. It was about the Eagles' epic collapse, losing 6 of their final 7, including that wild card game. That was the focus. So, looking around like, thinking, no. So, I don't see the Bucs having a repeat effort, particularly Baker Mayfield. Now I'm going to switch gears real quickly and do one final check-in on the NFL roster cuts to see what moves were made. We're going to scroll down, take a look at the moves made by each team. Here we go. The AFC East, you got the Buffalo Bills. They got QB Anthony Brown, Delmare Byrd, KJ Hamler, Lawrence Keys. So far out of that, the most notable name that stands out is Kyron Brown. And for the Dolphins, most notable name, Mike White being cut. And then for the Patriots, they're doing a lot of cuts. Most notably, Bailey Zappi, who was supposed to be Belichick's answer to fix Mac Jones' woes. Well, that didn't pan out, did it? I remember A.K. Eagle. He was high. A.K.A. Eagles Uncensored. He was high on Bailey Zappi being the replacement back in the 2022 season when we did the pick'ems, but obviously that didn't pan out. Patriots got Drake May. They're at least going to see what he does his rookie year. They know Bailey Zappi wasn't the answer. That's the most notable cut from that team. But the Patriots, you see, they made a lot of cuts. Sean Fenwick, Sam Roberts, a lot of claims were cut, but that's a team that's in a deep rebuild. Then again, that constantly cutting and waving players has always been part of that culture for the Patriots. And Gerard Mayo was part of that as a player under Belichick. Now that he's the head coach, he's taken what he learned from Belichick. He's going to try to implement elements of what he learned from Belichick, I think, which could also be the downfall of him as a head coach because we know how that usually works out. When, the Belichick wannabe syndrome, I call it. But moving on to the Jets. Got Neil Johnson so far. You got Russell Gage. Remember the former wide receiver for the Falcons cut? Riley Sharp. And the most notable cut there for the Ravens is Russell Gage at wide receiver. From the Bengals, Rocky Lombardi, which I don't even know who that is. Just an interesting name. Hakeem Butler got cut. Joshua Pryor, defensive tackle, got cut. There's a few notable names there cut. For the Browns, they're clearing the running back room, which is a bit interesting because Nick Chubb will not be cleared to play until at minimum week 5. He's out for the first 4 weeks of the season. Browns, you got Aiden Robbins, Jacob Sailors, Jalen Darden. A lot of wide receivers and running backs cut for the Browns. A few defensive ends are gone too. Isaiah Thomas, no relation to the basketball player Isaiah Thomas. Pittsburgh, got a few wide receivers, a few offensive linemen. No real notable names cut. But mostly at this point, that's what it is. Just trimming down the fat. You're not going to, for most teams, no pun intended. It's just a lot of cutting down the rosters. Indianapolis. Greg Ward, the former Eagle wide receiver. got cut there. Got cut. There's a notable name for some of you. Jaguars, CJ Beathard, remember him? He's been a guy moved from roster. Elijah Cooks, wide receiver, cut for the Jags. And for the Titans, you got Sam Schnee. Nothing really notable there. Now we're moving down to the AFC West. The Broncos, Philip Dorsett, the most notable name cut. Kansas City Chiefs. Not really any notable names. Although there's supposedly Kadarius Toney might be cut, and they did bring back Juju Smith-Schuster. So for KC fans, like, welcome back after that 1-year deal with the Patriots. Nathan Peterman cut from the Raiders, which I'm surprised Nathan Peterman even lasted as long as he did on that roster. That was his biggest accomplishment in the NFL, because for whatever reason, John Gruden brought him in after his catastrophic stint with the Bills. But yeah, Isaiah Spiller, running back, cut for the Chargers. Leon Johnson, wide receiver. Now moving to the NFC East. Let's take a look. Cowboys are clearing up the wide receiver room with no notable names except for Cam Johnson. The most notable name there that got cut. Looking out, you got who else? Cowboys roster, no real notable names. Giants, Allen Robinson got waived. Joshua Kelly at running back. Tyree Jackson, remember him, the Eagles fans? He was waived by the Giants. Get Darnell Holmes, defensive back. Christian Holmes, defensive back, waived. Eagles, it's still the same as it was before with Greer, Jenkins, Uzuma, Sharping, Okawa, Gardner, Nickerson. Commanders, Hartman, Martavis Bryant. It was interesting. I didn't even know Martavis Bryant was still in the NFL, even trying to make a roster. I was just surprised that Martavis Bryant even was at a training camp and even was in preseason, period. That's the biggest shock right there. Then you get to the NFC North. You got Brett Ripken, son of Mark Rippon, the former Super Bowl winning quarterback with Washington. And outside of that, I don't see any notable names that stand out for the Bears. But most of the teams are not. Oh, at Lions, Nate Sudfeld. Remember him? Week 17, 2020 season against Washington. When Doug Peterson, he was tanking in that game. You remember that? I remember that night, even though it's off subject. Philly Mike from the Philly Talk podcast, he had a live stream going. People in the comment section were calling him Nate Tankfeld during that second half. That's my fine memory of Nate Sudfeld, jokingly calling him Nate Tankfeld at the end of the 2020 season. But outside of that, but back on subject, no names that I remember. Packers, no notable names cut right there. The Vikings, most notable name cut was Matt Corral, I should say. Yeah, Matt Corral, a few running backs, a few tight ends. They're just trimming down the roster. NFC South, Falcons. Don't see any notable names there. Panthers, Jack Plummer, possibly related to Jake Plummer. Tavion Robinson, a wide receiver. Oh, James Robinson, running back, cut from the Saints. He didn't make their roster. Sterling Shepard, the former Giant, got cut by the Bucs, and so did Randy Gregory. NFC West, Desmond Ridder didn't make the Cardinals roster. Let's face it, we know he's not cut out for the NFL anyway. He'll see you in spring football, Desmond. The Rams, Boston Scott. Boston Scott didn't make the Rams. We got Alex Lidstorm. There's a few names from the Rams that stand up. 49ers, Matt Breida, the veteran journeyman back, did not make their roster. It's the most notable name. Seahawks, no real notable names for the Seahawks. But we still got till 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If there's anything notable with the Eagles, I'll go through their roster cuts. So I'm going to leave it at that, right? So I'm done with this, right? So I'm done for now. I want to say thanks to everyone that tunes in. I hope you have a great Tuesday. afternoon, or evening, or if you're catching this on the replay sometime Wednesday, Thursday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you're at. So shout out as always to the Hardcore Sports Network for having me on the platform, let me stream content to their platform. Shout out to all the viewers that come through. Without you guys, I would not have these streams going. And most of all, shout out to Mitch, who always uploads each podcast to Spotify. This will likely be on Spotify. I'll share it to my Twitter at the end of when it's ready. It's downloaded to Spotify, so you guys can catch it on Spotify. And real quick, I'll share the link to my Twitter, so if anyone comes through in the chat and you're not following me on Twitter, there's a link to my Twitter. You can follow me there, see what I'm tweeting out. That's all I got to say for today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you're at. Hope you stay safe. Have a lovely day. And until next time, Nicky Steez signing off. Fly, Eagles, fly.